So I think my guest needs no introduction, but I should introduce Aaron Levie, the founder and CEO of Box, perhaps the most prolific Twitter X writer on the topic of agents.
Not a claim to fame that I was going for, but happy to take it.
It seems like you've stepped into that role. I want to start talking about Box,
Sure.
Okay? Something I guess you know about.
A little bit.
So I understand you serve 67% of the Fortune 500. So you know something about serving large clients, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. You said recently that you are, as I know, a document management file system. You may not know this, but both of my startups were document management.
You're a document OG.
Yeah.
So this is you like files as much as I do.
Generation zero on documents.
We appreciate your service in defining the category. Although I think you wanted to get rid of folders, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't like that part.
Yeah.
So,
It turns out folders.
they're back. You need to put the documents somewhere.
You need a folders. You heard it here first.
The original graph, actually.
Yeah. So our goal always was to move from document management to knowledge management.
Yes.
All of the codified contracts and knowledge and strategies of companies are locked in these documents. You put them online, and then no one can ever find them.
Yes.
I'm wondering, are we at the
We had that one little flaw with the idea.
Yeah, exactly. It turns out no one can find anything.
Yes.
But I wonder if we're on the precipice of knowledge management transformation with agents, and how does Box see that?
Yeah, I think that's right. So if I remember my history correctly, I think your model was like a tag-based model, correct?
We did tags, yeah.
And that was obviously brilliant. I think you run into this issue, which is like, unfortunately, you still have to partition data between people and teams, and so you have this very quick kind of many-to-many relationship that happens in the document world, which is why the folder just became this kind of good, easy mental model for regular people that were not like super geeky, thinking about more like a wiki paste, linking system. And so the original idea with Box was, let's make it easy to access, share, and store and file and get to your files from anywhere. And then kind of ultimately we saw the problem that you just diagnosed, which is as the company has more information and more data, we have some customers with tens or hundreds of millions of folders and files. That just becomes an unwieldy problem for how does any human really go and find the stuff that they're looking for. Sure, you can do keyword search. That's obviously dependent on you kind of generally knowing the scope of what you're looking for. So we've just faced this issue for basically 20 years since we started the company, and I think more perniciously in the past maybe decade as we got larger and larger enterprises on the platform. And so there was one theory which is, okay, maybe everybody will tag everything, hard to do at scale, and users sort of atrophy that kind of process. Maybe you could kind of get metadata extraction. The technology didn't really work super well previously for that. It was very costly. And so we were just sort of sitting around kind of waiting for this moment, quite literally. Like 10 years ago, we had these demos of like, what if you could do a natural language question inside of a search box and find what you're looking for? And then obviously, AI models now let us do that. Now, the first approach was, I'll say we kind of aggressively leaned into the RAG approach. And that had some limitations that I think now we're all collectively mostly familiar with. You're kind of getting chunks of data back, and it's the precision can be sort of a coin toss sometimes. And now I think we're on the precipice of maybe what really is the long-term architecture, which is you have an agent. That agent has effectively full access to a set of tools, the ability to write code, do work, any real kind of meaningful work. And you give them the same tools that a user would have had, but the difference versus a user is they don't mind trying their search query 10 times. They don't mind doing it in parallel. They don't mind reading each of the documents to find out that the path that they went down was the wrong one, and then go and kind of change their query construct. And so now I think we're finally at this moment where you could basically say, I can put any amount of data into a system, and I can increasingly trust that agents will be able to go find what I'm looking for, answer questions for me, and start to do real work on my behalf. So it's starting in search, which is just find me either the document or the answer from within a set of documents, which is already a breakthrough, because now you can say, here's all my financial research, here's all my pharmaceutical data, go and answer this question where you have to collate multiple things together. That's, I think, the place where this is starting the most, and you can see this in ChatGPT and Claude with MCP servers and whatnot. But I think ultimately we're on the cusp of you actually just tell the agent to go do real work for you, and it has access to a bunch of your data and systems, and then goes off and actually produces the ultimate thing that you're working on. But I mean, it's such a different world than where it was 20 years ago.
I understand, or at least I imagine, that you're going to build agent templates to make it easier for Fortune 500 companies and other people to build their own agents or implement your agents. As I understand it, you've sort of verticalized that.
Yeah.
So you're building agents like for financial services type searches. Talk a bit about your initial initiatives building agents.
Yeah, so we as a horizontal platform, we still mostly lean horizontal, which
Okay.
is we want to build like core primitive technology that can be used and manifested in lines of business or verticals. So we have an agent kind of layer. We have the core file system, metadata system, workflow automation system. On top of that, you can either create agents or really entire almost kind of applications. We have a no-code app builder that obviously is way faster now to develop with because of where AI is going. And then we'll work with our customers to kind of deploy those in a verticalized way. But I do think it's going to be this really fun sort of tension between the vertical plays and the horizontal plays. The horizontal plays will get more and more powerful over time, which means that to some extent they can kind of drop into your workflow with and sort of collapse some of that extra vertical scaffolding that would have been needed before. On the other hand, on the vertical side, I think we all, especially if you serve the enterprise, you know how much change management is necessary in an enterprise. So then that kind of leans me back in favor of why I like a lot of the vertical startups, because you can kind of get into the organization and help them kind of construct the workflows in a way that is gets them through the hump of how hard sometimes the implementation of AI is. But I think we're gonna have this really healthy and interesting tension for many years to come. What we want to be is a platform for either of the outcomes. We'll be a platform if our customer wants a horizontal system, or if a partner wants to be deployed on a horizontal system. And we'll be a platform if there's a vertical startup that we kind of embed into as a file system or content management system for that agent.
As we move from like deterministic type systems to non-deterministic type systems, where the customer's searching for the data can't necessarily know if the agent's going to return the results they're expecting. Yeah. As I understand, you are building something you call company evals. And if this is wrong, you can just shift me. But yeah. As new models get changed, you test the fit?
Yeah. Yeah, so we do a general eval, which is we've tried to like assess what knowledge work looks like on documents across a range of industries. So we have our own, like now at this point probably 3 to 5 different evals that we run. One is like a very complex work eval, which is, you're a lawyer, you're a banker, you're in healthcare research. We give you a set of documents and you have to go and construct some answer from that set of documents or turn it into another document. So we eval all models against that. For company-specific evals, that's a little bit more of the Wild West on our platform, so we don't do much other than just here are the APIs and go at it. I do believe that we will. It's hard for me to imagine in the future every company not having their own evals for their own workflows, because the risk of implementing a new AI system that changes things just 2 or 3% in one direction or the other it could be catastrophic if you're in a mission critical process, and it could be incredibly positive if you actually all of a sudden get agent gains, but you'd want to know it. And so,
would you ever provide them tools to help them do
maybe,
that?
but I think honestly that's like such a different market, and
Gotcha.
I think they would implement Langsmith or Brain Trust or something else where every enterprise will probably have their own way of doing evals, and then our agents would kind of feed into that. But I think it's probably like it's hard, like everybody, you always want to attempt to try and sort of figure out what is the skeuomorphic analogy from today's way of working with agents. Like, is this like today, how do we eval our own work? Well, we have maybe a QA process, or we have performance reviews. Agents will need that as well. And so if you get new talent into your organization, you need to have some way of evaluating, is that talent doing the same, worse, or better than the rest of the population? And so that's why I think agent evals will just become like a de facto requirement of every enterprise in the future.
It wouldn't be a San Francisco interview if skeuomorphic didn't come up.
I'm going to try and get I don't know if there's like a bingo card at this conference, but
bingo.
I'm going to get every single one, I promise.
We should have shots.
I'm going to do every one.
Okay.
I guarantee it. Keep counting. We'll get Mog in here somehow. Like we're gonna do them all.
You wrote a very long post yesterday. Thank God that X now gives us better tools to write long posts.
I think we're all drowning in log posts. I don't know how.
It's nice to be able
Yeah.
to just read them in X rather than
Yeah.
have to click out. And it's building for a trillion agents. And Andre Karpathy responded right away. And I want to just read what he wrote and then have you talk about this. He said, legacy interfaces expect you to navigate web pages, click buttons, enter info here and there. He said, this suddenly feels rude. and your point, as I understand it, is we went from client-server computing, where our goal was to sell to the buyer, not the user.
Yeah.
Our big innovation, I think, in the last 10 years was to say, hey, maybe design matters. Maybe we should build for the user, things that are usable. However, your argument, I think, is all the future of software has to build for agents because there's going to be a trillion of them. So API consumption really matters, and people who are not really good at designing for the technical use case are going to be left behind. Am I roughly capturing?
Yeah, actually, I even like your setup better. If I could rewrite the post now, I'd probably add that.
Next time.
Maybe we'll do a follow-up. But I think that is roughly correct, right? I mean, you could even go back one more step, which is like, in mainframes, it was like built for the institution.
Yeah.
And then it went to IT, then it went to the user, and now to the agent. And I think that the metaphor kind of fully holds, or the analogy fully holds of what the impact is going to be, which is, in the 90s, if you didn't build for the CIO or the IT organization, you were kind of like you didn't exist.
Yeah.
You could have built software for users, but there was no viral adoption, so who really cared? Similarly, in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, if you didn't build for the end user, you just get completely, trounced by some viral software in the enterprise. We had Yammer, we had Slack, we had Zoom, et cetera. And so that kind of ripped through the enterprise. And so it stands to reason that in a world where we have trillions of agents, which is, it's hard to kind of like figure out, well, what do we call, what is it, an agent run or like a full, agent? But no matter what, like trillions of things will be happening with agents. That's kind of easy to claim at this point. Then they're going to be the primary users of software. So if every single agent run, if you just kind of think about every single agent run, can either have more friction or less friction with the tools that it uses. The ones that have more friction, they'll have higher latency. The agent will get the answer wrong. It'll produce the wrong result. And the one with the better API and lower friction and better system of intelligence of when they get the API call, they serve the right information. You can just imagine, millions and billions and trillions of events later, the systems that do better for agents will just simply win. We have really extreme versions, which is the agent might literally make a decision on the fly at runtime as to what tool to use. It might be like, okay, I really like this database over that database, and that maybe is due to its past experiences or an online review or something. So in the extreme end, the agent will literally choose its own tools. In the maybe more pragmatic enterprise version, over time, the company will just swap out technology that doesn't work well with agents. So, but like everything directionally points to, if you're not building for agents, you're not going to exist as a software company in 2, 3, 5 years from now. And I think this kind of redefines a lot of how we build software, right? Like we've had to do these kind of surreal exercises that we would not have imagined before, where we like look through, we'll like talk to our Box CLI via Claude Code, and we'll interact with it, and we'll see like where does it stumble, and there's just like these funny little places where it stumbles because we've created actions for it to use that maybe make it confusing. That a human, you could never do coding so fast as a human that you would have missed these things, but the agent is just like, it's just going to pick whatever it runs into, and so you have to actually think about like what is the newest, like what is the usability for the agent. It's like a new paradigm to think through. So we are improving our APIs, we're improving our documentation, I think Karpathy's point is like a very broad one, which is like, just like the internet was not built for this. Yeah. Like we need to make sure that like all of our software works in a way where you just like point the agent to something, and it has all the steps that it goes through. That could be documentation, that could be your application, and it just is operating.
If the agent has a wallet and wants to sign up for a service, it should be able to sign up on the fly. And if it can't, it might choose someone else's product.
And the cool thing is, like, when you really run this out, like we might have truly a completely different business model for the internet, because I think I've always been I've always been in this strange category where I've always wanted micropayments for things online.
Yeah.
Even though I've known that's not a good business model for the publisher, because most consumers they'll pay the 10
Humans
cents.
don't like the cognitive load of always having to make a purchase decision.
So like I've like appreciated why it's a bad business model, but I want it.
Yeah.
Now actually it probably is like a good business model. Because let's say you had paywalled, really proprietary data. You're Bloomberg, you're whatever. You have really important data. You're a medical institution, research institution. You could actually imagine there's maybe 100 million agents that would be tapping into that data for various use cases. All of a sudden, a penny a transaction starts to make a lot more sense than it did when you were capped at, 20 million people that maybe was interested in your content previously. That business model wouldn't have worked charging a penny per transaction. So we have new business models for information businesses. We probably have new business models for tools and APIs where it's not as much of a considered purchase anymore to use an API call. We probably want an agent to be able to have a budget and make any API call it wants. And all of a sudden you have this new revenue stream, which is these agents showing up, just transacting on your system. You don't have any contract with them. They're just transacting. All new ways to think about software business models. I do think that there's a disruptive element to existing software that is overly positioned only for, we only sell the software license. It needs to be a user. There is going to have to be an evolution of that, and I think that's what our industry will kind of have to go through.
And certainly we'll be dealing with the innovator's dilemma and people wanting to protect the old business models, which are very profitable.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that at least everybody actively operating today is we know how severe the innovator's dilemma is. We've seen it happen to enough
Every
companies at this
industry.
point. Yes, and so I think everyone's going to probably have to finesse their way to the other side, because you can't all of a sudden have your revenue drop. You have to kind of get there. But I think people are pretty familiar with how nuclear this could be if you don't adapt.
If we had shots, innovators.
Okay, good. Okay,
That'll
good.
be my virtual shot. If you haven't read it, it's Clayton Christensen's book.
Critical book.
Yeah. So, Jack Dorsey.
Yes.
Block laid off 40% of his staff.
Yeah.
So
Was this on one of the approved topips? I don't remember if we covered this one. Okay.
You don't have to announce you're laying off 40% of staff.
0% chance.
But so he laid off 40% of his staff. There is one narrative that he's getting ahead of the trend and that everyone is going to be doing it en masse. However, software jobs postings are up 10%. While the market for overall postings is down 5.8%, so that kind of feels a bit backwards. So I want to quote Max Levchin and then ask you to respond.
Yeah.
He said, I suspect that AI means fewer jobs is totally backwards. Most S&P 500 would love to build their own software but don't have talent.
Yeah.
We may still be supply constrained in software.
Yeah.
Jevons Paradox.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
All right, another shot.
Yeah.
Okay, we got Jevons in here. So I'm up until a point, I'm very Jevons pilled.
Yeah.
And I can think through some limitations, either due to technical capability or just some other kind of factor. But I'm very Jevons pilled, partly because we experience it ourselves and I see it from customers. I think that, let's just take just the Max Levchin thing first, and then you can...
We should just say, in case anyone doesn't know, Jevons Paradox was from coal in the 1900s, and the prediction was with the growth of the Industrial Revolution, you would destroy jobs and it would be bad for economy, and it turns out there was a booming market for more coal and for everything else, and markets expanded. So people believe that'll happen with software. Yeah,
well, actually, most people don't, and that's why it's a paradox. So the paradox basically is if you made some kind of input variable more efficient, coal in this case, then people would think that you would spend less on, in this case, trains, moving around stuff. But actually what happens is you spend way more than you did before because the efficiency led to more use cases that weren't anticipated in that kind of very narrow economic, kind of look that you had. And so let's just take software engineering for 1 second, but then you can kind of extrapolate. If you are we in Silicon Valley and those that have flown in or whatever, we're in the tech industry. Tech industry is kind of usually the desired place to, if you're a software engineer, to do awesome stuff. we've kind of like gotten our arms around a lot of like the best engineering talent out there. And that has meant that there's a lot of companies that don't get to do the big software projects in the way that they may have otherwise, or the cost, because of how economically attractive the work is in the software industry, is too high.
Yep.
Because in our industry, obviously engineering salaries are kind of above all else. And as you go to other industries, it's just hard to kind of like say, okay, we're going to put 50 engineers on X project that might be speculative, it might be digitizing some part of your business, it might be automating something. So it's not like they do like a halfway job. They don't do it at all. So what you have is all of these companies everywhere that are actually just not doing software. They're maybe using our SaaS tools, but they're not building anything. They're not customizing anything. They're not really automating all that much. So imagine a world where with an AI agent, doing the coding, that same project that was a 50-person project before is a 5-person project, or the kind of talent that wouldn't have been possible to get now all of a sudden has so much more leverage that you can kind of pour more capital into getting that talent. Think about all of the software that has not been written in any Fortune 500 company. You're an industrial company, you make tractors and you want to make them AI friendly and want to automate your workflows. Every bank, every pharmaceutical company where all of its work streams are now going to be way more digital, way more automated, doing research. Now all of a sudden, all of those companies will be signing up for way bigger projects than they would have before.
Aaron, because you talk to Fortune
Yes.
500 company CEOs, are you hearing this directly?
100%. So, if you went to a non-software CEO conference 5 years ago, I mean, maybe like 6 right before COVID or something, and you said like, what are your biggest talent challenges? Easily engineering and digital would be on the top of the list. It's like, we can't get enough people, we can't recruit from Google, like just all these things. We have so many projects, we don't have the talent to do them. Now, if you go to those same people, all of a sudden it becomes more and more likely that they can go and do this work. So the last thing they're going to go do is get rid of the talent that actually goes and works with the agents. And this is where you basically have to decide, do you believe in like 100% full AGI, or do you believe that humans remain in the loop? Assuming you believe humans remain in the loop, you basically then have jobs for humans. Yeah. Because yes, the workflow of building software is completely different.
Supervision.
It needs supervision. Yeah. I need to prompt the agent to go in a slightly different direction. I need to make sure it didn't blow up our permissions architecture when it wrote something. I need to make sure it gets tested and integrated with a broader system. When the system goes down, I have to go and actually like intervene. There are still thousands of activities that for now we don't know how to automate, and humans will effectively keep becoming the kind of overlay to whatever the agent was able to automate from a task standpoint. So that doesn't seem to go away, and I actually think there's a lot of roles in the economy where the same analogy holds. The economy wants more of those people. They're too expensive, so we don't have enough of them. And it's like, at first it's like, that's very counterintuitive, but not when you think about like all of the work it takes to do many of these jobs. Like, these are very skilled jobs. Some require like accreditation and you have to go through 9 years of school. Like, the economy does not have as many people doing work as the demand for that work exists. So AI is sort of your way it's your escape hatch for actually finally fulfilling those requirements.
The first signs of Jevons Paradox working is that OpenAI and Anthropic are hiring consultants to go out to implement AI, and you have Palantir forward deployed engineers. But I want to switch topics, which is back to Box.
Yep.
So
I've only been talking about Box in my head, so
yeah,
I'm fine.
okay. Yeah. A specific question about Box, not a generalized question. Okay. So if I understand correctly, one of the things you have been talking about is that every agent now needs a file system. Every agent will need its own architecture and infrastructure. I mean, I should say, here we are at Daytona. Daytona is...
It was on my mind as I was writing this.
Daytona, is architected to help people create new servers for agents and serve agents rather than humans. You will need file systems and email systems and the like for this trillion agents we're going to have. What does that help you like massively expand your TAM, and how are you thinking about that opportunity? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's if you just take continue the analogy of agents become as effective using computers as humans are, because of tool use and agentic tool use, and now they can write code on the fly for a problem they've never seen before. Then you kind of have this, and like OpenClaw took this in the most extreme direction, obviously, but you kind of have this world where an agent will be fully operating the same set of tools that you have access to as a person. We could decide collectively as an industry, does that agent operate them on your behalf, or are they their own entity? Interesting question that, again, OpenClaw kind of raised that as a question. But no matter what, you kind of think about it as, okay, this agent needs a sandbox compute environment so it can like safely operate on code and run it and make sure that it doesn't like escape out to in the wild. You probably maybe want an identity system. So as an organization, I can say, here are my like identity groups of all the, like here's the marketing team's agents and here's the sales team's agents. So maybe agent identities becomes a thing. Agent mail is super interesting because you need to have an email account because you might want to email an agent, or you might want an email coming in that the agent kind of responds to. So that becomes interesting. We look at things in the world of unstructured data and files, and we know that agents really, really love files. They use files in the form of markdown files for knowledge and for memory. They are great at processing unstructured data, so they might need to tap into files that you've kind of curated or want to share with them. But at the same time, you might not want to give them your entire file system, right? They could blow up your entire enterprise if they ran wild and you gave them the wrong prompt. So maybe that's a little bit too much control on one dimension. So you want to have it, likely as a partitioned file system that only the agent has access to and can't touch other things. So we think there's a bunch of primitives that are going to be necessary. This is a handful of the kind of more obvious ones. They'll probably use the internet searching for data differently than we do because, again, they can parallelize their searches and they can go through paywalls with a microtransaction. So we think about the future of all this infrastructure that has to get built out. We want to be the content layer for agents, or effectively the file system for AI. But there'll be other approaches as well. Obviously, there'll be open standards and open source projects, and you'll maybe want just object storage. But what we'll do is kind of play in the space where if you have an agent that needs to work with a lot of content, markdown files, PDFs, documents, and either generate content or read that content, and then especially the moment that agent has to share with somebody else, we're going to provide that kind of,
Are you already live with that as an offering, or that's just something you're
We're live with it in the sense of you could do everything I just said today.
Okay.
Sometimes we have too much friction per the prior point. Like sometimes we've nudged the agent in the wrong direction. Sometimes we haven't made it as easy for the agent themselves to sign up. Jared Friedman had a great point at Y Combinator of the agent's going to need to sign up for its own services. It has to do its own account management in some cases. So we're building out all of those improvements in infrastructure now.
Great. I have 10 more questions. We can ask them on a separate occasion.
Yeah,
really nice.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.